tonight's Board of Supervisors Budget Workshop for Thursday, October the 4th, 2018. I'd like to ask everyone to please stand for the pledge, and I'm going to ask Mr. Schuster to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And can I please have a moment of silence for those serving our country both at home and abroad? Thank you. So as you know, this is a workshop. It's not a typical business meeting, so we don't have the typical agenda of announcements and all that. I have just a couple quick announcements before we get right into it. I want to first announce that Mr. Crowley is with us. He's on the speakerphone. He's en route from work. We started tonight's meeting an hour early because it was just convenient for everyone to be here at this time. Also, I'd like to announce that I'm wearing my pink tonight because it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So I want to remind all you gals to go get your mammograms this month. It's very important. Get your screenings. Also, I just wanted to, before we get started, that this is just a workshop. I want to thank all of our department heads are here, our budget committee that's put a lot of time in taking a look at things for us. This is just a discussion. We're going to go through, Greg's going to give a PowerPoint. I'd like to ask everyone to please let him get through his whole presentation, and then we're just going to open it up for discussion from you, the department heads, the budget committee, supervisors, anyone from the public that has input. We're all ears. We'd like to hear it, and that's why we're here. We've done this, I guess, for the past several years now, and it's worked out pretty good. That it's educational for everyone that's interested in our budget, especially particularly this year. And if we need to have another workshop in the first week of November instead of a meeting, we will. So with that, I'm going to move right into the first order of business, which is the budget workshop, and I'm going to ask Mr. Schuster to go ahead and do his presentation.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I'd like to start off by thanking all the department heads and staff that are here. The budget, which is before you, you all received electronic and printed copies of it. It takes a lot of effort to go ahead and put that together, so a lot of thought goes into this, a lot of analysis, and I just want to thank all the department heads that have contributed. I also want to thank our finance director. This was the first time doing this in our new accounting software, so everything was done transitioning over there, so people were directly inputting it into the software. It's been a painful transition, as we knew it would be, but it's paying dividends, and this is going to be a much easier software to work with going forward. And of course, I want to recognize Catherine McGovern, who is really responsible for putting together the final document, chasing down department heads to get their descriptions, their data, and making sure that everything is in order as you see it today. So thanks to everyone for doing that and for coming out tonight to answer any questions that you may have.
And Catherine and Megan are here tonight, and the folks at home don't normally know these two because they're not department heads, but we could not run this township day to day without
Absolutely
either one
not.
of them. We could not.
That's
So
right.
Thank you. Thank both of you for being here, and thanks for what you do for us and the folks. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So I'd like to start off by doing a short presentation. A lot of this you've already seen in the framework presentation I gave at your last meeting, so it's going to be a little bit redundant, but I think bears repeating. I'm not going to go into the details of anything. If there's any detailed questions, we of course have the budget books and the department heads in which we can go ahead and attempt to answer your questions. But what we're really concentrating on in my proposed budget for 2019 is the general fund. We have some serious issues in our general fund, and I believe this is the year to fix them in order to prevent catastrophic damage. That's not to say we don't have issues in other funds. We do have issues in our debt fund and our park and rec fund. However, we're not concentrating, or I'm not proposing to concentrate on that in 2019. And that's really because in 2019, we're not going to need additional funding to handle the things that are putting stress on those funds. For example, Shenandoah Woods, if that purchase does go through, it's not going to impact the 2019 budget. It'll impact the 2020 budget and beyond. The build out of Warminster Community Park, likewise, is not going to impact the 2019 budget, but will impact the 2020 budget and beyond. So we're not concentrating on those two funds, but they are out there, and we have to remember that even if we solve the issues with the general fund this year, there are still some other issues to deal with in those two funds. So again, the two goals that I put out there for the construction of this budget were very simple. One was having a balanced budget that does not use any more fund balance. we're in a downward spiral right now where we're using fund balance and there's a big hole in our budget. If we were to keep on that pace, we would of course use up all our fund balance and run out of money at some time in the not too distant future. The second thing is put in the market value funding for the police pension. One of the major reasons why we're in this spiral is because of historic underfunding of the police pension. We need to stop that. We need to go ahead and put in what we're supposed to put into the pension, what the actuaries say we should be putting into the pension, and that's the only way we're going to be able to climb out of this hole. So those are the two goals I put forward in constructing this budget. This is a representation of where we've been over the last few years for net income on the general fund. You can see in 2015, we finished with $1 million to the good. 2016, $700,000 to the good. This is from a lot of that one-time fees that are coming in from all the development. The building permits, the transfer tax, all those things that are coming in are really contributing to that. All of that has pretty much gone away. We are still seeing development, but not on the scale that we've seen before. And what you saw in 2017 is we actually saw loss, a negative net income of approximately $300,000. In this year, 2018, we are estimating 1.5 to 1.6 million dollars. So we're always refining those numbers, but that's what we're looking at right now with this year's budget. If you look at the column all the way to the right, you'll see two scenarios for 2019. If you go with the proposed budget that I've put forward and the mill rate increase that I've put forward, you'll see that we don't have any deficit. I mean, there's a small deficit there just because the numbers don't tie out exactly. We actually think that'll change once we get the health insurance renewals in, and hopefully that'll lower the expenditures slightly. But essentially, you have a balanced budget at that point. The portion in red, that's what happens if you would adopt the budget I proposed without the tax increase, where you see approximately $2.5 million loss. And that is putting in the money in the pension fund at the market value level. So what would the impact be on the general fund? You can see historically, we've had a healthy general fund back in 2015. It's built up into 2016, but of course, those losses over the last couple of years have eroded that, and you can see what would happen in 2019 if we did not implement a tax increase and use the proposed budget that I've put forth. We would be down near $1 million, slightly over $1 million in the general fund, and that is frighteningly low. If we did this scenario and got through 2019, we would most likely have to go ahead and for 2020 have a tax anticipation note. There would also be some serious ramifications with other cash flow issues. And finally, the most scary thing is not so much, well, it is what's happening in 2019, but what happens in 2020 and beyond, because you can see by that trend, we run out of money. This is the exact slide that I put up at the last meeting, but it bears repeating on what's going on with our MMO, our minimum municipal obligation. The chart on the left shows on a blue line what we should have been funding for the combined MMO. The red line represents what we have funded. And you can see there's a divergence there. When you see a gap between those two numbers, that is the unfunded liability that you're pushing out to a future year. And every time you push it out to a future year, that increases the following year. So that's why that blue line is continually rising, because we're not funding what we're supposed to be funding, and the liability gets pushed out to a different year. The one on the left shows what happens if we were to use the operating reserve as I proposed in 2018 and if we didn't use the operating reserve in 2018 and left it alone, but also did market value funding in 2019, you can see that the lines diverge and the gap expands. After a couple years of making progress, I'd hate to see that happen. I would really like to get these lines as close together as possible, and that's the model on the right. That's what shows us using the operating reserve in 2018 and also using the market value funding for 2019. The reason why I'm proposing using the operating reserve in 2018 is because we're on a 2-year cycle with the MMO. So we're coming to the close of that cycle. So 2017 and 2018 are 2 years in that cycle. And 2019 will be a revaluation of the MMO, of the actuarial analysis behind that. So putting in that money in 2018 will help the future MMO. If you put it in 2019, of course it'll help, but it'll be too late to get into the next cycle. It will actually be 2 years before that catches up. That's why I think it's important to get it in 2018 versus 2019. So the mill rate increases that I propose to accomplish all this is a 7.6 mil increase in the general fund, and also a smaller increase in the fire fund of 0.23 mils. And the reason behind the one with the fire fund is because in reviewing the budget, we realized that we are paying the volunteer fire companies workers' comp insurance out of the general fund. It really belongs in the fire fund, but we didn't want to just move it over to the fire fund and then reduce the amount of direct aid we're giving to the fire companies. So that millage increase covers the cost of that workers' comp insurance. The total would be a 7.83 mil increase. That would take the general fund from 11.09 up to 18.69, and would take the total millage from 17.07 to 24.9. As I've stated before, the general fund has a mill rate cap of 14. Above 14 and up to 19, you need the permission of the court to go ahead and make that increase. Been talking to the solicitor about that, and we do have things pretty well in order that if you wanted to go that route, we're pretty confident on the timing of that, and if there's any specific questions, I can answer that later. I want to talk a little bit about the history of the tax funds in the township, and I apologize, I know this is quite the eye chart, and the next slide is going to be as well. The column all the way to the right is the total tax millage, and all the other columns are the various funds building up to that. And what you can see is the last mill rate increase was from 2010 to 2011. There was one before that in 2005 going to 2006. So we have had 2 tax increases in the last 15 years. I think the next slide shows a little bit of a comparison. What I did there is I put the township, school, and county side by side. So you can see the increases from the mill rate perspective as well as the percentage increase. Warminster has a history of doing very large increases at very distant intervals. There was a 49, close to 50% increase in 2006, a 41% increase in 2011, and the proposed one for this year is approximately 46%. On the school side, they do it differently. They go ahead and do smaller increases typically. They've had a couple bigger increases, but if you look back for the past 15 years, I think there's only about 3 years in which they didn't do an increase. It's just more incremental. So those are 2 different ways of doing it. I can give you my thoughts on which is better, but it's not going to change where we are right now. This slide, I think, is one of the most important slides, though, because a lot of people are going to look at the percentages, and they're going to go ahead and assume the worst, or they could apply it the wrong way. They may think that the proposal is for a 45 or 46% increase on their total tax bill. That's not the case. We are talking simply on the township portion of the tax bill. The township portion of the tax bill is the smallest portion of the tax bill. And I know that everyone has different finances and everyone has different abilities to go ahead and handle a tax increase. But if you look at the dollars, I just want to get across that we're not talking thousands and thousands of dollars to the average residents. So the average assessment that we have for a residence is $25,553. If you look at the chart, and you can pick whichever mill rate you want to go ahead and compare it to, but we'll use the one towards the bottom because that's the closest one to what I'm proposing. You're looking at an approximate $200 per year tax increase, or about $17 a month. So I think putting it in dollars and cents helps put things in perspective. I know a question is going to come up about, well, the proposed mill rate is pretty high. Is there any way to go ahead and reduce that? Here are a couple options, none of which are going to help in the long term, but could provide relief in the short term. On the revenue side, you can continue to use fund balance. That's only good until fund balance is depleted. Same thing with the operating reserve. You can only use that until it's depleted and buy yourself a little bit of time. On the expenditure side, there's a couple things you can do. You can cancel the purchase of Shenandoah Woods, which wouldn't really have an impact on the 2019 budget, but would have an impact on future budgets. One of the big expenses is the police cars for about $250,000. However, I think everyone knows the ramifications. If you don't purchase police cars, you just run up miles on the other existing cars, they wear out, and you have a fleet which is falling apart. So while that would have some short-term savings, it would have long-term repercussions. You could keep the police pension on the smoothing method. That would save about $538,000 in 2019. But as I've spoken before, you know what the ramifications are of that. You are you're continually digging the hole rather than trying to get yourself out of it. And of course, the last thing is additional elimination of positions. I think, as you all know, for the last decade, Warminster has really been shedding positions, whether it be at the golf course or at the police department or at Public Works or Park and Rec. There have been a large reduction of positions over the last decade. We're at a position where I think we're pretty much at bare bones. Any further reductions is going to see drastic implications on our ability to provide services to the township. So next steps, numbers will continue to be refined. Probably the two biggest things we're looking at right now to change is the health insurance. As soon as we get the renewal for that, we can update numbers. And the second thing I'll mention is sanitation. We do have a budget in there for sanitation. The numbers in there, we inflated somewhat just to be on the safe side, but we won't know those numbers until the trash hauler bid comes back. That bid is out right now. We do anticipate awarding that in November and having much more solid numbers. But in any case, that sanitation fund will not affect the tax rate one way or the other. That is based off of fees for each parcel. The timeline, we're at the budget workshop right now. Of course, you can talk about the budget at your October 18th meeting. If the board feels it's necessary, you can add additional budget workshop on November 1st. I'd be looking to adopt a preliminary budget on November 15th and then adopting a final budget on December 20th. So myself and the staff are here to answer any questions that you may have. And other than that, we just await your guidance on what support we can give as you go through this process.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Schuster, for a very detailed report. It's time to just open it up for conversation. If any board members would like to go first, or anyone from the public or department heads have any input, we're all ears.
I do have a, let me start off with one question. So $2.5 million deficit in 2019, if we were to stay on the market value method, what would be the deficit if we were to go back to smoothing for 2019?
$2 million.
So that was in the presentation, and so if we were to stay on the smoothing method, that would save us $538,000. So let's say that's about $1.5 million savings right there. Again, savings in 2019, future costs in other years.
Right.
And we did pay market value in 17?
So in 2016, we were on the smoothing method, but Mr. Wiesner had budgeted a contingency pension line item, and we did put that into the pension. It was not, if I recall, at market value, but put us pretty close.
Right.
2017, I did budget us at market value. So in 2017, we did put in market value. 2018, the current year, we are back on smoothing.
And smoothing is basically getting your credit card bill and saying, let me pay the minimum.
Correct.
So
My other question has to do with because I believe I'd have to pull it up. I was just looking over the Budget Committee's proposals, which is a menu of various options. So it indicated that a mill increase to about 19 mills would get us until about 2023, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
So my question for you is that if we were to exhaust our taxing ability at that point, what do we do if we found ourselves to be back into another deficit?
So if we were to bump up against the 19 mil cap, we have very few options. The options that would be before us would be as follows. Number one, change the form of government, which would require a referendum. For instance, a first-class township does not have a cap on the mill rate like that at 14. I believe it goes up to 30 some odd, yeah. So there's that. The other way you can exceed that cap is by going to referendum, by asking the voters to allow you to exceed that cap. I believe there's another method that if you are in the Act 47 program, that you are given some additional leeway, but please don't quote me on that. I'd have to do some additional research on that. Those are really the only things that I can think of. Perhaps the biggest thing that would alleviate the situation, and I know it's not going to happen, is a county-wide reassessment. At the moment, the common level ratio for assessments in Bucks County is 10.4%. That's the lowest of any county in Pennsylvania. To use an example, if we were in Montgomery County, I think our mill rate would be about half of what it is right now.
The value of the mill would be much
Yeah, everything would be proportional, but we wouldn't be in this situation in terms of talking about those caps. So it really has to do with the assessments done by the county that puts us in a little bit of a bind with that cap, because it's not the cap, it's very arbitrary, since every single county has a different method of assessing and a different common level ratio.
And the township has no control over assessment.
We have no control
County.
over that, correct.
That's all I have.
I just took a few notes here while you were, because I didn't want to interrupt your presentation. I wanted to touch on number 3 I had written down here is police cars, which had up there. I know in the past that we let the police cars go, and it was a huge mistake. We ended up having to replenish the fleet like right quick, and
Yes.
we have to have a fleet of police cars. That is essential service.
Yeah, I agree. When I talk about, I believe as I said, it's a short-term savings, but a long-term additional cost. The police are going to put the same amount of miles, they're just going to put on fewer cars, and they're going to go to junk that much quicker.
Yeah.
To that point, though, I mean, Chief Donnelly, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we have a township insurance company is telling us that after so many miles, you have to replace the police vehicles, and we have vehicles that are well over that mileage.
Yeah, I believe the guidance was 75 to 100,000, and Chief, if you have any information on how many exceed that or.
Good evening. How are
Hi,
you?
Chief. How are you?
Good. Currently, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 cars over 100,000 miles. One at 108, one at 104, one at 124, one at 90, one at 149, one at 196.
Wow.
122. So I have 7 over 100. I have one at 97. Give me a second. The rest are in the 60s on the threshold of hitting 70 or 75,000.
So this isn't a wish list. This is a necessity, because I certainly won't want a police vehicle come to my house with the possibility of it breaking down.
Absolutely. I mean, you're going to pay for it one way or the other. I mean,
Yeah.
Gene and Andy do a phenomenal job. Gene and Andy are our maintenance guys. Our cars are up there nonstop, and we're a busy township. We're running anywhere from 5 to 8 cars, plus anywhere from 3 to 5 CID or SIU cars, plus 2 command cars. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We're the only 24-hour operation in this township, 365 days a year.
Man, Chief,
So-
we went through this years ago where we held off and held off and held off.
Yeah,
and it's a
2013,
mistake. It's a mistake.
2012, 2013, we
Yeah.
bought no cars.
Yeah.
So
And
we're
it's a
still
mistake.
feeling the ramifications from
Yeah.
that.
Right. Just for the people at home too, I think, because there's a lot of people that might be at home, they're thinking, 140, 150,000 and their car runs fine. Police cars, and you could probably tell your own stories, but police cars, when they're getting over 100,000, it's not pretty. I mean, the
No,
first
they're-
car, I had an old
They're hard
Caprice.
miles.
at
They're
100
hard,
yeah.
hard city-driven miles.
That's right.
Braking hard, turning hard, running.
Running
the
constantly,
big
whether
thing-
it's mileage
I mean,
running or
these-
not, the
These
car's
miles are
running.
nothing compared. Right now, we have a program that I'm looking at, we're running to, just to capture the amount of hours they run. Right now, we run a work-rest ratio on our patrol cars. 8 cars work, 8 cars rest, 16 cars in the fleet, that part. But they run for 12 hours. There's so much electronics in these cars, from in-car camera, backseat car camera, in-car computer, MDT, you name it, it's plugged into these cars. And they're a mobile office, and they're running, and that's just our cars. That's the CID cars, the SIU cars on surveillances and things like that that are constantly running. So, and it's not, we got home and we park our car in a driveway. Now, they're getting ready right now. The night crew's going out tonight, and they'll run 8 cars. As soon as they start them, they won't stop them until 7 o'clock tomorrow morning, because the batteries, we eat batteries. You can talk to Gene or Andy, they'll tell you, we eat car batteries like there's nobody's business. So, it's just the cost of doing business.
So I know we're not taking any action tonight, but I think we're all in agreement on this. It sounds like it. All right.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thanks,
That's-
Chief.
Chief, we might have you back up again, but, all right.
In terms of being on agreement, I think the increase to the fire fund, 2.3.
Yeah, that's another one. Go ahead, Dan.
In
You wanna
agreement
take
with that.
All right.
I am.
Yeah, that's essential service, and we took action at the last meeting to do a fire study, because we all know that we're headed towards some type of full-time fireman, or some change in our model has to happen, because they're having a problem responding because of the volunteers. But we'll talk about that in future, but the small millage, at least, will fund the workers' comp, which we need to do. It's essential service. So I think we're in agreement on that as well.
Exactly.
Anyone have anything else?
Sorry.
Fine, you good?
I'm good.
Yeah. I wanted to touch on, I know you talked about staffing. I mean, I know that we've eliminated to the point where I personally feel that we're understaffed. But that's where we are. I think the police department's understaffed, and I know our other departments are. But this is where we are, and we have to stabilize before we can even think about going back up. We just do. So we've cut expenditures everywhere we possibly can, and then some. There's only one place to turn, it's revenue. And that's what we're here just to start to discuss. And Greg has a proposal here, and it's open for discussion.
How much of the budget, so if you take out all employee related items, that's including healthcare, that's including salaries and things of that nature, what's left with respect to the buildings and the properties and the maintenance and all that kind of stuff?
You know,
What percentage of the budget?
I don't know off the top of my head, but my guess is 70 to 80% of our costs are employee related.
Okay.
Does anyone want to correct me? I don't know if everyone else.
I was gonna say it's about 2/3 minimum.
All right.
Which is typical of any municipality,
Right.
yes.
And I think when we talk about jobs, we talk about one of the largest portions of that with respect to the police department. And again, in my experience with 43, having been there and even been slightly below it in Radnor Township for a period of time as a police supervisor, they are at minimum. So I agree with you.
Do you want to talk a little pension a little more? That, I know we covered it once already. The MMO, I mean, hopefully everyone, and this is for the public, that they understand what this is. I mean, and I stated every year when we adopt our budget that this is a bill that went from 300,000 a year to 2.5 million. This is a bill we never had before that someday we're gonna have to deal with. And this is part of what, I understand what you're trying to do here, to start to close that gap, that we have to do it. We have to do it, so.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak just a little bit to the history of what happened. So Pennsylvania, in what they believed that was doing municipalities a favor, allowed municipalities to do the smoothing method, which basically says, okay, if you don't hit your assumed rate of return in any given year, you can take that loss and spread it out over a number of years rather than try to make up for it in the next year or the next cycle. And while it does provide some short-term relief, we all know what the end result is.
And it did when we needed it. It did when we needed it.
It-
Because in 2011, 12, we needed it.
Absolutely, it certainly helps that one time, but it creates that hole in your budget. It creates that unfunded liability, it just gets pushed out to other years. So it's crucial that we get off of that cycle. Every 2 years, the actuary comes in, looks at all of our census, all of our agreements, and our pension plans, and our funding levels, and says, okay, this is what you need to go ahead and do to fund your plan, both at the market value method, which is what you should be doing, and at the smoothing method. And when you choose the smoothing method, again, you're just pushing out the unfunded liability.
Right.
So that cycle's coming to a close at the end of this year. They'll do another valuation, and then we'll jump into the next cycle.
Greg,
we're-
what is the, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Kathy.
I just wanted to ask to explain to the folks at home, because a lot of folks don't know what MMO means. And I
That's
know-
where I was kind of going.
Yeah.
Okay.
MMO stands for a minimum municipal obligation. That is the minimum that the state says we have to put into the pension fund.
These for our employees.
For our employees, yes. We do have 2 pension funds. One is for police employees, the other is for non-uniform employees. All police employees are in that pension fund, which all uniform police employees are in that pension fund. Starting in 2013, all new hires, all new non-uniform new hires have gone into a defined contribution plan. So we contribute that every single year in accordance with our policies and with the union contract. So there's no issue with the defined contribution plan, but there is legacy costs from the pension
And in
plan.
fact, the defined contribution, we've brought a new company in to administer that because our goal is to make our employees as whole in that as they
Yes.
would be in a defined benefit plan at the end of their service to the township. And, while we're on talking about the pension, I mean, I know and I think we all agree on this. This is not our employees' fault. This is a benefit that our employees are entitled to. It's up to us as taxpayers and public officials to fund it. This is a benefit of their employment. It's their pension. I know, I'm collecting mine, you know what I mean? I totally get it. It has to be funded. We have to fund it.
About I forget how long ago it was, 8 or 9 months ago, when we talked about bringing in some financial advisors through a state program where they would have shared, I think it would have been a cost of like $40,000.
The DCED Early Intervention Program.
That's right.
Yes.
Is that coming back around again? Will we be able to reapply for that if the board?
Question.
So the answer is yes, it would be
Appropriate.
under the same parameters. It's not something we would get back in time for the 2019 budget,
Right.
so it's not going to help your deliberations now. But it's something that can be used next year. However, to be honest, the fear that I have is we're almost past that point where if action isn't taken now, you're not going to have many options. The whole point of that early intervention program is to avoid Act 47. In the absence of a change here, we're looking, right at Act 47 and starting to have conversations with DCED next year about it. So yes, it's always an option, but I think when you look at the memo that was provided by the Budget Committee, which lists out a bunch of options, not recommendations, but a list of options, I don't think you're going to see anything from DCED or the consultant that's brought in that's going to really be drastically different than all of that. And if any you want, we do have sample plans that have been put together for other municipalities, so you can see kind of what you'd get. But it's always an option. Outside assistance is always welcome. I just don't know how much value it's going to bring, early next year or mid next year. I can answer that question based on the decisions you make with this budget.
Did you find it helpful in the past?
I've never used it in the past.
Oh, okay.
And I do want to do a shout out because there's a couple members from the budget board that is here, Ken Hayes and Bob Welsh. Thanks for coming. And looking over the list of options that were, you guys had a tough job before you. I mean, it's for the public at home. I mean, this was something that we recommended several months ago, and these are just neighbors. I mean, they're not financial whizzes. I mean, these are your fellow neighbors that wanted to come in and get their own eyes on what we're dealing with, and I think that They all look a little paler now than they did when they first started.
Yeah, and
So,
Ken,
but
we're
thank
open
you.
if you want to give any comments, we're glad to hear from you. Sure, Ken, come on up, buddy. Long time no see.
Here you go.
Well, actually, I don't have the,
Come on.
yeah, so, Ken Hayes, 850 Lingo Drive. Good evening, everyone. We, since May, have been going over everything that Greg and Catherine and John have been providing to us, and actually, you guys and ladies have a tough decision. There's no real good choices here.
All right.
None that I see.
This isn't a tough one for me, Ken. I pay my bills at home, and I plan on paying my bills
Yeah,
here.
well, exactly. Well, I guess the question is, how are you going to pay for it?
Right, right,
And that's what we've been pouring over.
right.
And again, we made these options rather than recommendations because the way the resolution's written, we need to review the proposed budget first before we make any recommendations. So
Right.
we'll be doing that at our next meeting.
Yeah.
And
And we'll look forward to hearing what your thoughts, you know?
yeah, it's brutal. Be careful what you wish for, right, Mark?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, but, I mean, there's things in here that, personally, I'm not real fond of. But I agree, you have to pay your bills, and,
Right.
that ultimately, that's your decision, and it is a tough one. But I do want to thank the rest of the members because, and everyone that attended, so,
So
it
you
was a
guys,
tough task.
you'll still be meeting?
Yes, we're going to meet on the 16th, I believe, 2 days before your regular board meeting.
Okay.
Yes, on the 16th, and then hopefully we'll have some recommendations, whether it be a combination of these, whether it be something that miraculously appears, but,
Because Greg and I have constant conversations about this daily. I mean, for what, the past year. And the option of doing nothing takes us into the entire 2019 having this discussion at every meeting. And,
well, if you do nothing,
correct?
my guess is that you're looking at Act 47.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
And, I guess basically the committee agrees, correct me if I'm wrong, Bob and Mike, that's an option you do not want to do.
No.
Because now, the way I understand Act 47 is basically everyone here really doesn't have a whole lot of say in what goes on.
All right, true.
So you're going to be at the mercy of the DCED.
All right. And a state appointed administrator, right?
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah, so, there's other options here.
And I don't think
none
any of
good.
us want to go down that road. I mean, I know we don't.
No, I don't think anybody would want to do that. I
Right.
mean, but we got the budget, we have the proposed budget. It's pretty lengthy, so we haven't had a whole lot of time to, we're in the process of reviewing it. And then we'll get
Right.
together on the 16th, and then we'll work with you guys again. I mean, we're looking forward to working with you and resolving the issues here.
Yeah, Greg said you guys have had some really good discussions, so I really
Yeah,
appreciate
yeah. I
it.
mean, they've been, they're good discussions, in depth. I mean, everybody understands it, even though we're just regular citizens.
All right.
We do quite understand what the
And
problem is.
that's like the purpose of this, and what you're doing is to educate the public on
Yeah,
where we are.
and that's key. I mean, when you look at the pension fund, the defined benefit pension, I mean, some people get up here and they complain about it, but that's not in your control. You don't decide.
Right?
It's done by the state, so you just have to.
You have to fund it.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
So, rather than complain, you need to find a way to do it.
Right.
You know what I
Exactly.
mean? And that's
I agree.
and honestly, and I really give kudos to the board for that, or the committee, because no one's complaining, we're looking for a solution.
So, right.
And one of the keys to this, and I've been kind of adamant on this, is, as in the resolution, we're looking for long-term solutions, not just something to get us down the road a few years. I mean,
Right.
that might be what we have to do, I don't know. I mean, again, that's your decision, but we're going to be looking at things to make us financially stable and sustainable for years to come.
Right.
And again, there's not a lot of options.
Yeah, there's not, because you just showed me the numbers of the elimination of heads here in the past 10 years, and it's substantial. There's
Yeah.
nowhere else to go on the,
Yeah.
as you know, on the expenditure side, there's nowhere else to turn. There's
No.
just not.
No, I think we're at bare bones, so,
I mean, we were fortunate to have a company like Spirit Golf to come in and take the golf operation over without a hiccup. In fact, they've done a phenomenal job over there.
right, right. Yeah, I mean, and the golf fund is solvent.
Uh,
You know, there is some things that are coming up that kind of prevent it from paying back right now.
Yeah,
But it-
rain,
it's-
rain's one of them.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, that's true. But right now, I mean, unfortunately, you can't, there's maintenance and there's things that, capital improvements that need to be done, so.
Absolutely. And the same goes with Park and Rec. We have
Right.
beautiful parkland, tons of it. We have to maintain it.
Yeah.
And from what I get from Karen, her guys are just putting out fires because we have so much property to take care of. They're not,
Right.
they don't have time to do improvements. They're just putting out fires.
No, I agree. And, the Shenandoah Woods, I don't know that some of the options in here are really a good solution, to be honest with you. I
Right.
mean, police chief agrees with some stuff, and there's stormwater issues. There's also, one-time fees that might see you through a year or so, but
Right.
then what do you do?
Right.
And then you lose your open space. And it's not consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Correct.
So,
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of different things,
I just
Speaking
wanna
of that,
take-
the-
I'm sorry, go ahead.
The 55 and older community, that proposal, not a fan of that, or,
Personally,
yeah,
I don't want to see the open space disappear, because one reason it's contiguous with the park.
correct.
And that's the last piece of open space that we actually have here, to develop it.
Mhm.
Personally, no, I
Okay.
disagree with that. We put it, there's a lot of options that none of us agree on wholly on all of them, but we need to present them to
That's why
you.
we're here, for discussion.
Exactly, and
That's
we
why
need
we're
to
here.
present everything to you, but, on a personal level, no, I'm not a fan of developing Shenandoah Woods at all. I think it should be part of the park, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
That's my personal opinion, but.
Just want to take a moment to thank you and the rest of the board for putting in your personal time, to try to solve some of the issues that we're facing in the township. And we do appreciate that your group is working so hard to help us out.
Well, thank you, and I want to thank Bob, Mike, Nora, and Paul as well.
Yeah.
And we're not done. We want to work closely with you guys to see, see this through. We're not just going to send you another memo and say, okay, thanks a lot, see you later. Obviously, we have not much time, but another month or so, right?
No.
So,
And I apologize, Mike, I didn't really see you back there. In fact, I'm not sure if we actually met, so.
does anybody have any other questions about the memo?
No.
Okay, thank you.
They all have a
Thank you.
copy of it.
Sorry?
So, yeah, they all have a copy
Oh,
of it, just so
okay.
you know.
Thank you, Ken. Jason, I know you, Mr. Crowley managed to get here. We probably appreciate you being here.
Oh, well, no, thank you for accommodating me with the phone. I apologize, I'm pulling a Bartle tonight without my tie, I forgot it.
Ooh.
And I just didn't want to stop home before coming here, so I came right here. But please continue the discussion, I have been listening the entire time,
Okay.
so as we go.
Yeah, I just wanted to see if you wanted to, if you had anything
I
before we
mean,
move
honestly, the workshop, the spreadsheet, the slideshow is not unfamiliar to me either, nor is the guidance or the warnings. I'm at a crossroads in terms of is determining what kind of township are we going to be moving forward. I thought Mr. Schuster did a good job of laying it out in pretty stark terms of what the paths we can choose. We're at a point where we have cut everything we can cut, and now we have to decide what we value as a community. And do we want reduced services in order to keep that tax number low? Or do we want to fund those services with an increased tax number? I have my personal feelings, I'm sure everybody in this room does too. And I'm looking forward, honestly, to hearing other views. outside of just those that I hear on a daily basis, talking to the lady and gentlemen on these boards and those I run with. I just want to hear more opinions about how it impacts you, or, you know, for example, I think the 0.23 mil increase for the firefighter service is absolutely needed. And it's, you know, I don't ever go into spending money lightly, but it's absolutely something we have to have in order to have a vital township. I feel that way about a number of different things. I'm sure it'll come out during the discussion as we go on. But those are my initial thoughts, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So the floor is open. Anyone? Come on up, John, please.
I just wanted to give a little perspective on the MMO, the minimum municipal obligation. We talked about it conceptually, but the smoothing method, the market value method, it is a significant cost factor in our budget. And it's fresh because right now we're planning on paying the 2018 MMO. The dollar amount total is $2,264,012. So nearly 2.3 million for this year's MMO, and that's on the smoothing method. The total general fund budget is about 16.3 million. So it's about almost 14%. The MMO is about 14% of our general
As
fund.
opposed to what it was 9 years ago.
Right. So I just wanted to put out the dollar amounts because that gives a little perspective on, you know, what it represents in our budget.
And we're operating at an 8% assumed rate of return as well,
Correct.
which is
Which
high.
could have the effect of pushing the MMO up. So,
If we operated at a lower assumed rate of return,
right,
a real one.
right. So anyway, that's what I wanted to mention about the MMO.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
We are facing some really tough decisions, and we certainly want our citizens to be safe, to have our fire protection, to have our police department fully equipped. Any guidance that we can receive from the Budget Committee, or any other information that, as Jason said, that residents want to share, that would be helpful to us in making these tough decisions, we welcome that. And it is going to be very, very tough, but that's what we're hired to do, right, folks?
Yep.
So, you know, we'll just roll up our sleeves and dig deep and try to do the right thing on behalf of all our residents.
Can I add one thing?
Yeah, please, come on, Ken, sure.
So through the course of the whole Budget Committee meetings, we started to see some people actually come to the meetings for the last two. And one of the things, and this alludes to what you were saying, Kathy, that some of the things that people were saying to us, some of the residents, what's very, very important to them, and something that I want to share with you, is the fact that this is a great township and it has great services. And people don't want to see the services diminished.
Right.
So I just wanted to share that. I mean, the light bulb went off as soon as I heard you say that. So I just wanted to let you know. That was one of the things that was said to us several times, you know, throughout the process, that they, you know, that's why they're here. I mean, everybody loves the lower tax rate, but, you know, the services are what really it was key in some of the comments we've had.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Oh, please, Georgia. Whoever wants to go first. That's what we're here for.
Question first from Greg Schuster. The average 1 mil.
Can you go to the mic, please?
The average 1 mil, what does that bring in, Greg?
Approximately
An average-
$322,000.
No, for one resident, let's say.
Oh, for one resident,
Yeah.
the average is $25.
$25.
Yes.
Well, the rumors have it selling the water authority and sewer authority. Compared to Aqua rates, which I pay in Glenside store and my Happer store, and if we use the same rates that they use right now, the average resident will pay approximately $1,000 more a year. You may call that a tax, but that equals to 30 mils. That equals to 30 mils if you sell it to Aqua. You can pass this around, these are the facts. So I highly recommend you look somewhere else.
Well,
possibly.
that's what we're doing.
I appreciate that.
Just for everyone's clarification, the public as well, this budget has nothing to do with selling the authority. That's not something we're working on. So just, this is to solve the problems with the tools we have at our disposal.
Oh, what, do you have something? Sure.
Anderson Marshall Drive, 25-year resident. Please excuse my ignorance of the process. I have a question. Budgets, we're talking about expenditures and tax increases. What other resources for income does the township have? I'm not sure, what part does the earned income tax play in the township budget?
Excellent question. So the earned income tax is something which the township has levied. So 1% is taken from paychecks of people who reside in Warminster. 50% of that 1% goes to the school district, 50% remains with the township, with one big exception, and that has to do with the Sterling Act. The Sterling Act states that anyone that happens to work in the city of Philadelphia, that 1%, and actually a little more than that, is directed directly to the city, so we do not see any of that. So that is the earned income tax that we receive. And we receive approximately $4.4 million a year of earned income tax.
And if you're wondering, that number we're missing out on is $400,000 a year due to the Sterling Act.
Well, I used to work in Philadelphia and live in
Yeah.
Warminster, so I'm
So,
very
yeah.
familiar. I'm
Me-
also a
me
retired
too, me
paint
too,
fitter,
for a
so
long
I'm
time.
familiar with the pension plan problems.
So none of that 1% which was taken out of your paycheck ever made it to Warminster.
Yeah, I figured that much. But I'm more along the lines of, are there any other sources of income that could be addressed as opposed to cuts to the budget? I mean, I think your budget is very fair from what I reviewed. I think you did a wonderful job clarifying why it has to be that way. It seems to me that there should be some form of discussion about some way to increase income beyond just taxes. I mean, is there any possibility the earned income tax could be raised to?
No, we're capped at
we're
1%
capped.
by law.
Yeah, we actually looked at that last year. We discussed it a little bit last year.
Yeah, and I think the question was asked, but it's capped at 1% per lot. By law, and I think it's even grandfathered now. I don't think you even could enact it now if you wanted to, but I'd have to double check on that. So we're very limited on what we can and can't do by state law. The property tax is really the variable that we have to adjust. Earned income tax is another big piece. There's other pieces in there, such as the cable franchise fee. There are permit fees and everything, but tinkering with those is not going to generate significant revenue. In fact, the cable franchise fee, that's done by every 5 years or so whenever we do a new franchise agreement. The fees, we try to strike a balance between being friendly to our residents, and we can't charge exorbitant fees. So
Understood.
I think at the end of the day, though, whichever the source, whether it be fees or tax revenue, we're talking about the same people where the money's coming from.
Again, and excuse my ignorance, but are there any current abatements that are going to expire, tax abatement programs anywhere? I mean,
There's no abatements that I'm aware of. The only thing we have in place is a number of pilot programs. Pilot stands for payment in lieu of taxes, that we have with some of our continuing care facilities, such as Ann's Choice and Christ's Home. But those have already been addressed and taken care of through the number of years. And we do receive not 100% of the taxes from them, but in some cases very close to 70 or 80%. I have to look at the exact agreements. And that's recognition that the continuing care facilities could, if push come to shove, become tax exempt. They do have a standing to become tax exempt, but what's typically done rather than a lengthy court fight is to settle on an appropriate amount, recognizing that most of these facilities are self-contained and don't need as many services as a typical residential neighborhood does. So those are not abatements, but that's probably the closest thing that we have.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything? Well, any board members have anything else? Anything else to add? Any department heads?
Yeah, I mean,
I guess we're going to wrap it up then. I mean, I pretty much covered what I wanted to cover for tonight anyway. I know we're going to have much more discussion on this.
Does the board have any guidance from me at this point? If nothing else, I'll add it to the October 18th agenda for any discussion.
Yeah, definitely. We're definitely going to have
I
more.
think
discussion.
you've really did a phenomenal report outline here for us. I think we have a lot we have to study and think about and what our options may be. So I think that's where we're at right now. We all have to do some soul searching and figure out what is best for the township.
And the proposed budget is on the website.
The proposed budget is on the website. If any of you have any questions, please let me know. I know I've already talked to some of you. If anyone wants to sit down one-on-one with me or some department heads, happy to arrange that. It also goes for the public. If anyone in the public has any questions, feel free to, call in or email, and we'll do our best to go ahead and answer these.
Yeah.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you, Greg. Bye, Jay.
Yeah, no, right now, if we're there, because I was speaking with some residents tonight who were not aware of the time change, or that it was an earlier meeting than
Yeah.
normal. If we, we obviously had to advertise this meeting, right?
We advertised it, we posted on the website, and we put it up on social media. We pretty much did what we could.
But if we do 11:1, because that's not our normal meeting. again,
Yes.
We're aiming for 7 o'clock that time,
Right.
right?
Right now, it is advertised for 7 o'clock. I believe that was that included in the annual, so that's already been advertised since the beginning of the year. Yes,
Yeah, I just want to make sure it's,
yes.
so that everybody has an
And,
opportunity.
and that's another reason that we're broadcasting tonight's budget workshop. We normally don't, but we want to broadcast it, so it's going to run, it'll run, right?
It'll run on cable, it'll go up on YouTube.
Right.
So,
Any,
Okay, I don't have anything else unless anyone else does.
I mean, the biggest challenge is the police pension. And to me, I mean, we made an agreement with, you guys do the work and you'll be compensated. As it stands right now, they're not going to be compensated. So something needs to be done about that.
Absolutely.
yeah, I agree. I mean, the promises were made and promises have to be kept. So we have to find a way to do that.
Correct. So we have something to work with here, we have something to discuss here, we have something to discuss with the public, because I'm sure we're all going to be approached, and department heads may be approached as well. And Greg, you're open anytime, anyone that wants to meet with you?
I wouldn't say anytime, but I'm
But I mean,
pretty available.
You'll arrange to meet with the folks if they want to meet with you?
Absolutely. Please give me a call, and we will do everything we can to answer your questions, talk through things. Just whatever support you need, we're here to give.
Because we're certainly not looking to hide anything here. This is public information, this is public documents, this is public money. It's not our money, it's the public's, taxpayer.
And before we wrap up, we rarely get the opportunity to have so many of our team members in one place. I just, not only for putting together this budget, but just, what you guys do every day in every department you work in, whether it's the library, the police, the roads. You only typically hear about the bad things or the stuff people complain about. But there's a lot of people out there who appreciate the work you guys are doing. And I know as a resident, just forget the titles and everything, as a resident, my kids love going over to the library, all the stuff that we're doing over there, all the work that's being done over there. All the guys and gals out there working on the roads, and our cops responding at 3 a.m. Trust me, I hear them. And our firefighters. You guys, you're often not in the same room. I just wanted to take this opportunity just to say thank you. That's all.
Anyone else have anything before we wrap it up?
Everything Jason just said, ditto.
Okay, well, we're gonna wrap it up here. I'm gonna ask for a motion to adjourn then.
So moved.
Mr. McPhelps, okay, meeting adjourned. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, guys, for coming. Thank you.